The rifle's barrel shook slightly against Jake Harlan's shoulder as he peered through the swirling blizzard. Down in the valley, blanketed by Montana's relentless winter, a woman lay wounded next to her fallen horse, and she bore an uncanny resemblance to his late wife. Not exact, the cheekbones were higher, the hair a deeper auburn under her ripped bonnet, but those eyes, damn those eyes, were Abigail's, glaring up at him through the storm like a judgment from beyond the grave. He'd been chasing the Dalton gang for 4 days across these unforgiving plains, their tracks fading like smoke in the wind. But now, watching this stranger fight to rise on what was obviously a shattered ankle, Jake felt a fissure split open in his heart, something iced over for 3 long years. The wise move would be to turn his horse and ride on, letting the storm swallow her as it had everything else worth a damn in this brutal land. Because Jake Harlan knew, with the bone-deep certainty of a man who'd buried his world, that some specters were best left undisturbed. Yet as she locked eyes with him, those familiar depths shifting from defiance to desperate plea, one question seared through his mind like hot iron. What do you do when the dead won't stay buried? 3 miles from his ranch house, Jake made his decision. He dismounted with the quiet grace of an old cavalryman, his boots sinking into the thigh-high drifts. The womano older than 30 was clawing toward a cluster of evergreens, her right leg trailing limp behind her. "Easy there," he called, his voice gravelly from months of solitude. "I ain't here to harm you." She whipped around, and hell, the similarity punched him square in the gut. But where Abigail had been warm and yielding, this woman's features held a razor edge, like a flower armored with spikes. "Back off," she snarled, groping inside her coat for what looked like a pocket pistol, small but lethal up close. Her fingers trembled, though not just from the freeze. Jake held up his hands. "Ma'am, you're leaking blood into the snow, and this blizzard's going to turn us both to ice before dawn. You can pull that trigger or let me help. Your call." Those eyes, God. Those eyes scanned his face with a piercing scrutiny that set his nerves on edge, as if she were hunting for secrets. "You're him," she murmured, the words slicing through the wind. "You're Jake Harlan." The name echoed between them like a threat. In these parts, it carried baggage, most of it shadowed. Jake's fingers twitched toward his revolver instinctively. "Who's asking?" "Nora Hayes," she said, her tone steady despite the agony etching her features. "Abigail's sister." The world blurred white and silent around them, not even the gale daring to interrupt. Abigail had spoken of a sister Ancia librarian from Billings, too independent and headstrong to venture into the wilds. "She figures the frontier will break her spirit." Abigail had chuckled, her fingers weaving through Jake's hair as they lounged by the fire. "She doesn't get that fragile things don't last out here." But this woman, defiant and bleeding in the drifts, was anything but fragile. Abigail never began, then clamped down. There were a dozen things Abigail hadn't shared, as he'd discovered too late. "What brings you here?" Nora's grin was ice cold. "I came to face my brother-in-law, to stare him down and demand why he let my sister die." The charge struck like a gut punch, but Jake had endured worse. He'd been enduring it every night for 3 years, replaying Abigail's blood staining the Billings Trail crimson. "Ma'am, I don't know what tales you've heard." "I've heard plenty." She tried to stand, winced as the bone grated. "Rachel Thornton wrote me. Told me about your secret, how you knew the Dalton gang was raiding that trail, but sent Abigail anyway." Rachel Thornton. The name stirred sour recollections, a woman who'd pined for Jake, turning venomous when he'd picked Abigail instead. But why would she? Heavy flakes started tumbling, and Jake knew they had moments before the tempest turned fatal. "Ma'am, I couldn't care less what Rachel spun, but unless you fancy freezing solid to prove your point, we gotta move." He stepped forward, and she leveled the pistol at his chest. "Don't lay a hand on me." The barrel quivered, and he saw her strength falter. The gun dropped into the snow as she crumpled, her skin ashen from pain and chill. Without a word, he lifted her into his arms. She was slighter than Abigail, her frame all taut sinew and edges where his wife had been gentle curves. This one was forged for endurance, not ease. "I despise you," she hissed against his collar as he hoisted her onto his horse. "Good," Jake muttered, his breath fogging the air. "Hate'll keep the blood pumping." But as he mounted behind her, wrapping an arm to steady her for the trek home, he caught a flicker in her tone that chilled his veins and quickened his pulse. Recognition. Because when she'd truly seen him, her gaze hadn't held only loathing, it burned with longing. The same raw craving he glimpsed in his mirror each dawn. And Jake Harlan knew, with the grim surety of a man marching to the noose, that Nora Hayes would shatter his fragile existence. The question was, would he welcome the ruin? The ranch house slammed into Nora like a freight train. Everything matched Abigail's letters to a teeth: fieldstone hearth, the wolf pelt rug, the oak table Jake had crafted himself. But what the letters omitted, what no words could capture, was how Abigail's essence lingered in every nook. Her knitting basket by the fire, yarn still looped on the pegs, her green shawl draped over a hook by the door, as if she'd just shrugged it off, even the faint whiff of her rosewater lingering in the air. "Lord," Nora whispered as Jake lowered her into the armchair by the blaze Abigail's chair. She realized with a stab of grief. The flames danced shadows across his face, and for the first time, she truly saw him. Jake Harlan wasn't the villain she'd conjured. He was tall and solid, built from years of hard labor, but there was a tenderness in how he knelt to check her ankle, his touch precise and gentle. A faded scar jagged from his right brow to his chin, deep enough to whisper of near death. His eyes were storm blue, weighted with losses tallied too precisely. "It's not fractured," he said softly. "Sprained bad, but it'll mend." He fetched water from the pump, ripped bandages from a fresh shirt, but Nora noticed the shake in his hands, the way he dodged her gaze. "Because I resemble her," she thought. "Because every glance revives what he lost." "Why'd you send her alone?" she demanded as he bound her ankle. His hands paused. "I didn't send her anywhere. Your sister wasn't one to be directed. Rachel said you knew about the Dalton gang. Said you had a choice." Jake's jaw tightened like he was grinding glass. "Rachel Thornton's got her own axe to grind. So she's lying?" "I'm saying—" He rose abruptly, facing the fire. The glow etched harsh lines on his face. "It's messy." Nora's fury ignited. "Messy? My sister's dead, and you call it messy?" "Your sister had lung cancer." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Nora's vision swam, breath seizing. "What?" Jake's shoulders slumped, a man buckling under invisible chains. It had been gnawing at her for months. She was heading to Billings for a specialist, not some shopping trip like I told everyone. "That's impossible. She'd have told me. She swore me to secrecy. Wanted to handle it with grace, face it solo." His voice fractured. "Even made me bunk in the stable those final weeks, scold and bear me, witnessing her frailty." Nora's thoughts spun. Those last letters from Abigail briefer, script more deliberate. She'd assumed wedded bliss, kept her busy. "You're fabricating this." Jake pivoted, and the naked anguish in his eyes stole her air. "I pleaded with her not to go that day. Warned her the trails were dicey, rumors of the Dalton boys prowling the Billings route. But she insisted the doc could only slaughter then, and cancer don't pause for safety." He crossed to the mantel, lifting a tin box. Inside, glass vials gleamed. Codeine, morphine, all for pain without remedy. "I pushed to go along," demanded it. But she said, his voice shattered. She said she couldn't stand dying in my sight. Wanted me to recall her vital. The room tilted around Nora like a carousel. All she'd clung to, the rage fueling her journey across 2 states, was crumbling. The last thing she said, Nora murmured. "What was it?" Jake shut his eyes. She said, "Don't let them know about," and then she was gone. Never knew what. Don't let them know about the cancer, Nora realized. Even in death, Abigail shielded her dignity. "Oh God," she breathed. "What have I done?" But Jake wasn't eyeing her. He stared at a tintype on the mantel. Abigail in her bridal gown, radiant. "You look so much like her," he said quietly. "Same eyes, same smile when you're not plotting my end. But different, tougher, like you've got more fire." His tone sent a shiver over her skin. The way he regarded her now wasn't brotherly. It was a man's gaze on a woman, making her acutely conscious of her disheveled gown, her locks cascading free. "Mr. Harlan, Jake." The name tasted risky on her lips. "Jake, I'm sorry. I latched onto Rachel's lies because I needed a villain. Grief demands an outlet, and you were handy." He faced her fully, firelight igniting the desire in his eyes, the same starved need she'd been denying in herself. "I get it." The atmosphere thickened, charged like before a lightning bolt. Nora felt her heartbeat in her throat, saw his chest heave as if battling for breath. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Yeah." He stepped nearer. "It was." But he closed the gap anyway, and Nora didn't retreat cold because amid sorrow and remorse, between enmity and yearning, something fresh was igniting, something blending rescue and ruin. The blizzard raged outside, sealing them in this haunt of memories, and as Jake's hand grazed her cheek, fingers quivering like birchen wind, Nora knew change was inevitable. The only uncertainty, would they endure? For days the storm imprisoned them, and by the third night, Nora grasped why old preachers ranted of temptation as a beast. It prowled in how Jake's denim shirt hugged his frame as he chopped firewood, in the deliberate space he maintained, as if nearness might scorch them, in the stolen glances he'd snatch before averting with near panic. "You don't gotta bed down on the floor," she'd offered the first night, eyeing his pallet by the hearth. "I do." His reply rasped harsher than the gale. But on the third, when the mercury plunged so low frost etched the panes inside, decorum became folly. "You'll turn to ice," Nora stated, folding back the quilt on Abigail's their bed. "And I'll freeze seeing you do it." Jake lingered in the doorway, clad in long johns, and that tormented look she was decoding. "Nora, it's just heat," she fibbed. "Just staying alive." But when he slid under the covers, a cushion barricading them like a feudal dam, they both knew it transcended that. She sensed his warmth radiating, heard his measured breaths, feigning indifference. But feigning faltered when stray brushes sparked lightning through her. "Tell me about her," Nora murmured into the void. About Abigail when she was joyful. She felt him tense. "Why?" "Because I want her that way in my mind. All I have are missives and hearsay. You had her complete." For an age, silence reigned. Then his voice emerged, tender and awed, like rediscovering a faded hymn. She'd hum while baking old folk tunes from her ma. Voice like honey, temper like a bobcat when provoked. A beat. Tried teaching me poker once. Cheated shamelessly and laughed about it. Nora grinned in the dark. She mentioned that. Said you played like a mule, stubborn and clueless. Did she? Amusement warmed his tone, the first she'd heard. They conversed till dawn about Abigail, the life she'd forged here, the woman they'd cherished differently. And in those hushed exchanges, their careful divide eroded. It began subtly, hands grazing over the coffee pot, Jake's eyes lingering on her profile when he thought her oblivious, their charged ballet in the tight space. On the fourth day, fixing a loosened barn door the winds had battered, it erupted. Nora steadied the plank as Jake nailed, and when he leaned in to align it, his breath warmed her neck. Instinctively, she turned, their faces inches apart, close enough to spot the silver flecks in his blue eyes. "Nora," he breathed, her name a benediction and blasphemy. "I know," she replied, for she knew they teetered on a precipice that would alter all, knew they should retreat, honor the ghost permeating the ranch. But knowing and acting diverged. When Jake's palm cupped her jaw, his thumbs sketching her lip with devotion that buckled her knees, Nora pressed into it. "This is insanity," he growled, but his free hand knotted in her hair, angling her head. "Yes," she concurred, and drew him to her. The kiss was no tender marital peck. It was inferno and despair, 3 years of isolation funneled into their melding mouths. Jake kissed like a parched man gulping oasis water, and Nora matched with a ferocity that stunned them. His hands roamed through her tresses, along her collarbone, hauling her flush till she felt his every rigid contour. She gasped into him as he hefted her onto the workbench, positioning between her legs in a way that ignited fireworks behind her lids. "God, Nora," he groaned at her throat, lips discovering the pulse point under her ear. "I want to try not to." Her answer dissolved in a moan as he trailed kisses downward, fingers fumbling her buttons with urgent need. The sturdy calico parted, exposing her linen shift, and when his mouth met her breasts swell through the cloth, Nora thought bliss might end her. Dimly, her hands attacked his shirt, craving flesh on flesh. When they found his scarred torso, badges of battle survived, he quaked like fever's victim. "I should halt," he rasped, but his palms were shoving the shift from her shoulders, baring skin untouched by any but her. "We should," she panted, arching nearer with consuming ache. "Don't," she begged, the plea fractured and raw. "Please don't." But as she uttered it, as her form bowed to his with devouring need, her gaze snagged on something that iced her blood. Atop the sill over the bench sat Abigail's trinket case, its etched lilies seeming to judge her, recalling whose home this was, whose husband, betraying all she'd valued. "No," she gasped, shoving his chest with frantic force. "No, we can't. I can't." The trance splintered like dropped crystal. Jake reeled back, his expression flashing bewilderment, wound, then comprehension as he traced her stare to the box. "Christ," he rasped, raking trembling hands through his hair. "What are we doing?" Nora clutched her gown shut, abruptly mortified by her exposure. "I don't know." The ensuing hush brimmed with regret and thwarted passion. Outside, the tempest that had caged them for 4 days eased, pale sunlight piercing the glass. "Storm's lifting," Jake noted flatly. "Yes." Nora fastened buttons, reclaiming poise. "I should leave." "Where?" The query snapped sharper than meant. The question you'd posed earlier came out sharper than intended. "You arrived with zilch. Where to?" She met his eyes post-break, and what lurked there beyond lust, something profound resembling love clutched her heart. "I don't know," she confessed, "but I can't remain. Not after not knowing what we nearly. What we nearly did was choose life over graves," Jake said softly. "Abigail wouldn't have." "Don't," she lashed. "Don't presume what my sister desired. You didn't know her enough to spot her dying." The strike landed. Jake paled, then steeled. "You're right. I didn't know her at all. And I damn sure don't know you." But as he spun away, as Nora collected her scant possessions with quaking hands, they both knew the lie. In those 4 days confined, in murmured tales and furtive caresses, they'd mapped each other's essences. And that intimacy was peril incarnate. By dusk, the path to town cleared. By morn, Nora Hayes would vanish, bearing the first spark of joy Jake had felt since they hauled Abigail back in a cedar casket. But as evening descended and the house quieted, her Abed, him by the fire, both sensed some portals, once ajar, sealed no more. What would emerge? And would they live through it? Morning delivered more than storms, and it brought Harlan Blackwood and 7 riders, their mounts snorting steam in the crisp air like demons roused. Jake heard them approach before sighting. Saddle creaks, spur chimes, the restrained gait of horses held by men itching to gallop. "Visitors," he murmured, spinning his revolver's chamber before holstering. "The bad sort." Nora, bundling her things with a fugitive's resolve, sharpened. "What kind?" "The worst." Through the pane, Blackwood's bulky silhouette materialized in the fog. He was hefty, flabby midsection, but steel-eyed, forgiving nothing. Behind, his overseer Buck Riley and 6 more faces Jake knew from Silver Creek's dives and card tables. "Miss Hayes," Blackwood bellowed, his politeness oily as a con man's. "If you're inside, ma'am, best come out. Folks are worried about your honor." Nora blanched. In these frontiers, a lady's repute was her sole coin, and even whispers of scandal could ruin her like lead. "Scoundrel," Jake growled. He'd foreseen this since carrying her over his threshold. In Silver Creek, rumors raced like prairie fires. "What does he want?" Nora hissed. "My spread, the river access with it. This is his pretext to seize what's his obsession." Through the glass, Blackwood consulted his watch with mock patience. "Now, Miss Hayes, I know you're a proper, upright lady. Surely you see how this appears an unwed woman holed up 4 days with a man of dubious standing." Dubious? The slur struck deep. Since Abigail's passing, Jake's name had soured from hero to heel the brave scout, turned craven who'd abandoned his wife. "You don't gotta confront this," Jake said low. "Back exit through the cellar. You'd hit the main road before they twig." But Nora marched to the door, back ramrod as a musket. "No, I won't flee. Nora, I said no." She wheeled, her eyes blazing like Abigail's in fury, twisting his gut. "I came for truth on my sister's death. I won't bolt till I've faced all truths." Before he could bar her, she stepped onto the porch like royalty addressing serfs. The dawn light gilded her hair's copper strands, made her fair skin glow. Even rumpled, chin high in challenge, she was stunning enough to halt breaths. "Mr. Blackwood," she projected clearly, "I reckon you've got weighty words, seeing as you brought a posse." Blackwood's smile was crypt cold. "Indeed, ma'am. Words out you've been shacked here days, unchaperoned with a fella not your spouse." And the blunt retort floored Blackwood. He'd anticipated blushes, denials, sobs. Instead, he faced a woman unashamed, knowing her innocence. "Well, if it is, such setups ain't fitting for a gal of your caliber." "My caliber?" Nora's voice sharpened to a blade. "And what's that, Mr. Blackwood? A woman blizzard-stranded who took refuge from an honorable man? Or one who don't need your nod to choose?" Behind Blackwood, Buck Riley shifted in his stirrups. "Watch it, lady. You're addressing the man who runs this valley." "Runs," Nora echoed, "but not owns. How regrettable for him." Jake stifled a grin amid the peril. Abigail had spark when irked, but Nora was dynamite dazzling, destructive, utterly bold. "Now listen," Blackwood flushed. "I'm being civil, ma'am, safeguarding what's left of your good name. But if you keep sassing, then what?" Jake's voice rang from the porch, drawing all eyes. He strode with a gunslinger's fluid poise, palm casual on his pistol grip. "You'll what, Harlan?" "I'll do what's required to shield this territory's decent people from your ilk, Harlan." The vow lingered like pyre smoke. Around the clearing, Jake spotted sunlight flashing on gun barrels more of Blackwood's crew, blocking flight. "Harlan," Jake said calmly, "you covet my land, just admit it. Don't cower behind a woman's petticoats." "Your land?" Blackwood barked a laugh void of mirth. "After your deeds letting your wife perish, now tainting this innocent, you'll be fortunate if we let you slink out of this valley breathing." The taunt uncoiled something feral in Jake's core, the pre-battle chill from his army days. His grip adjusted, digits cradling the familiar heft. "Careful, Blackwood. You're about to spout something irrevocable." "Am I?" Blackwood's volume swelled for his crowd. "Tell me, Harlan, what man send his wife into peril solo? What man beds her kin before her plot's settled?" "The man weary of your venom," Jake replied, his calm lethal as a viper's coil. "The man with zilch to forfeit." "Jake, don't Nora's please slice the strain. He ain't worth it." But Blackwood was lunging for a sidearm. What unfolded spanned heartbeats, time dilating, details hyper-sharp. Jake's draw was artistry seamless, drilled, fatal. The revolver materialized, muzzle arcing true as his thumb cocked the hammer. The blast thundered across the flats. Blackwood's pistol, half drawn, flew into the snow as he howled, clutching his mangled hand. "Jesus!" Buck Riley yelled, his own iron partially out before Jake's next round shredded bark by his ear. "Next fool who twitches gets worse than bark," Jake said mildly, but his eyes were glacial, and all knew his sincerity. For an endless instant, only Blackwood's ragged gasps and pine sighs filled the air. Then, slowly, palms lifted from holsters to pommels. "This ain't finished," Blackwood snarled, nursing his wound. "You can't guard her eternal, Harlan. And when you're dust, I'll recall her lip today." The menace landed heavy as a blow. As long as Jake lingered, Nora was marked. But departure. "Harlan," a fresh voice interjected, steady and commanding. "I believe you've yapped enough." Heads swiveled to the cottonwoods, where a lone horseman perched as if materialized. He was elder, gray-maned and refined in trail garb, but the star on his vest paled Blackwood. "Sheriff Donovan," Blackwood said, tone abruptly deferential. "Didn't know you were round these parts." "I'm now." Sheriff Luke Donovan eased into the glade with the leisurely assurance of a veteran who'd stared down bandits from here to the Dakotas. "And from the chatter I've caught, it's high time real justice hit this valley." He swung down with the measured care of creaky bones, then inspected Blackwood's injury. "Clean hit," he noted. "Lucky for you, Harlan aimed to maim, not end. Man of his caliber could have placed that slug anywhere." "His caliber?" Blackwood spat. "He's a yellow belly who earned the Medal of Valor at Eagle Pass." Donovan cut in evenly. "Who solo-stalled 40 Sioux Raiders for his platoon to retreat. Who's got more citations for guts than you've got whiskers?" The disclosure rippled the group like a shockwave. Even Nora gaped, eyes widening at Jake. "You never mentioned," she said softly. Jake's jaw ground bitter. "Didn't matter." "Mr. Blackwood," Donovan pressed, "I've been probing some curious claims about your dealings. Seems multiple spreads fell to you under shady terms. Care to clarify?" But Blackwood was reining in, face thunderous with defeat. "This ain't over," he repeated, but the bark lacked bite. Sans opinion's armor. He was mere thug with a busted paw and dented pride. "Actually," Donovan said, "it is. Gather your kit, Blackwood. You've got a day to vacate my jurisdiction." The hush was absolute. Then, gradually, Blackwood and his band retreated, leaving only fading hoof prints and Snow's murmur. "Well," Donovan said, pocketing his watch, "that played out fair as expected." He turned to Jake and Nora, face inscrutable. "Now, let's step inside and chat about tomorrow." The missive hid in Abigail's trinket case, under the frayed silk lining at one edge. Nora unearthed it 2 hours after Sheriff Donovan departed, vowing Blackwood's tyranny done. Her fingers trembled unfolding the known script, ink dim but clear in lamplight. "My beloved Nora," it opened, "if this reaches you, I'm departed, and you've sought truths. I hope you uncover them here, with my parting boon to you both." Jake hovered at the threshold, unwilling to intrude. He'd been prepping to bolt bag stuffed, mount provisioned. The scheme: fade into the Badlands, free Nora to rebuild sans his tarnished shadow. But now she wept, droplets silvering the page, voicing the departed. "What does it say?" he asked gently. Nora's voice wavered, reading. "I know your thoughts, sister dear. The self-blame etching your soul, how you fault yourself for absence in my need. But grasp this, I selected this road. I faced the cancer solitary cause pride barred you seeing me frail. And I dispatched you cause staying would have cost your joy to tend my fade." She paused, swiping tears. "But there's more you must learn about the man who adored me so fiercely he'd suffer endlessly to ease my pang. Jake doesn't realize I'm penning this. He thinks me napping. But naps are luxuries gone. Time flees, and truths demand voicing." Jake's throat knotted. Even post-mortem, Abigail rescued him. He self-condemns for my end, for not riding that coach, not perishing with me on the Billings dust. But here's the fact that'll crush him sans liberation. I implored him stay. Begged, truly, 'cause I foresaw the Billings verdict the death knell to hope. I craved one final morn watching him mend fences and hum tuneless. One last vision of my groom over the widower I'd forge. The lines hammered Jake like fists. He slumped against the jam, face ashen with stun and perhaps release. She knew, he whispered. Lord, she knew throughout. Nora read on, voice firming. Thus, darling sister, if vengeance drove you here, seek elsewhere. Jake Harlan's sin is solely loving me too deeply for graceful release. And if I ken the two souls I treasured most, you share the family stubborn streak. She glanced at Jake, eyes glistening with tears and budding hope, which leads to my ultimate plea, last medal in lives I'll no longer grace. Nora, you sought justice westward but found treasure, a man who comprehends bereavement, the burden of bearing the gone. And Jake, if you heed this which I pray you be, found what I wished, a woman sturdy enough to love sand supplanting me. The ranch's quiet was deep, broken by winds sigh through evergreens. I bestow my blessing willingly, sans reserve, not 'cause I'm absent, but 'cause I never truly left. Love endures past its vessel. It thrives in sharing hearts. And hearts expand for sorrow and delight, remembrance and promise. The note closed with Abigail's flourish, but a footnote in fresher ink. P.S. Jake abandons at the case's base our grandma's, for the gal bold enough to mend a shattered man. You'll know its use. Nora's inhale hitched as Jake delved into the box, extracting a pouch holding a plain gold ring with a lone emerald. Nora, he said, voice husky, I ain't prime stockholder, rougher than you merit, haunted enough for a cemetery. But if you'll take me— Yes, she interrupted, beaming through tears. Yes, you idiot. Yes. As he slid the ring on, as he tugged her into a kiss, Nora swore the air lightened not grief's crush, but something airy, like absolution, mercy, a dawn from yesterday's embers. What do you think of this tale of love rising from loss? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Did Jake and Nora deserve their happy ending? Or was it too soon after Abigail's death? Take a stand and let me know your perspective.